Welcome everybody to the 6th game analysis of the World Chess Championship, Magnus Carlsen versus Sergei Karyakin. Game number 6. So far all games have ended in a draw, but in the last game for the first time the challenger Karyakin was at least putting on pressure on his opponent, creating some winning chances. And now Karyakin going into game 6 and 7 with the white pieces, so we'll see what he made out of this one at least, and then what he makes out of the next one. A double white can be quite valuable in such a match, obviously. So Karyakin, just as in the previous two white games, starts with e4, and once again we're seeing the Ruy Lopez bishop b5, and once again Carlsen is not going for the Berlin Wall here with knight f6. I'm wondering if we'll see him play this at all in this match, maybe later on. But he goes for a6. And we're actually following for a long time the game from round 4. So, two previous games up to this point, right here. This is a position they also had in game 4. And there Carlsen played d6. But now he's going for d5, which is a pawn sacrifice, quite in the spirit of the Marshall Gambit. And of course, Karyakin was also prepared for this, and they blitzed out a few more moves here. White takes this pawn on e5, and now knight d4. There's also a move knight takes e5, but knight d4 is quite possible, and this is what Carlsen had prepared. So why did black sacrifice this pawn, or what does he get in return? Well, for one, black is better developed. You can see that all the black minor pieces are already developed and doing something. And especially his bishop is well placed on this long diagonal. Whereas the white pieces, well, the whole king side, queen side, is still undeveloped, still takes time to get back in the game, or well, to get into a game in the first place. So these factors allow black to give this pawn for active play and also better space advantage here. You can see how black is just having a little bit more space and the nice knights in the center. So Karyakin had prepared this for a little bit longer. Knight c3. White is developing his knight b4. White is developing his last minor piece as well, bishop f4. And now knight takes b3, exchanging this bishop. And Carlsen immediately blitzed out c5, which appeared to be a move that Karyakin was not familiar with. Quite a logical move. Black is taking more control of the center and not allowing white to go d4. And now this knight on b4 is quite unpleasant for white, since it's targeting c2 and white cannot bring out his queen to g4 or h5 or something like that. So Karyakin decided to go knight e4, which is hinting at the idea of playing c3 and pushing this knight out. And here Carlsen, probably still in his preparation, blitz out a sequence of moves which is pretty much forced. f6, pushing the first knight back, and then f5, pushing the second knight back, which in fact didn't go back forward to g5. If the knight goes back, well, black will play bishop f6 and just have very nice control with these very strong bishops on the long diagonals, and definitely enough compensation for the pawn. So Karyakin went knight eg5, and we see there's a fork possibility here on e6. Now black took, bishop takes g5, white has to take with the bishop, white has to take with the knight. If he takes with the bishop, then there's bishop takes f3 intermediate move, and black loses a piece either if the queen takes f3, queen takes g5, or bishop takes d8, bishop takes d1, rook takes d1, rook takes d8. In both these variations, black is up the knight on b4. So white takes back with the knight, and now h6. What is this about? Pushing the knight to e6? Well, after knight e6, which by the way was more or less forced, since after knight f3 black can take, and here we have this problem that white would like to take with the queen, but cannot because of this fork on c2, forking to 2 rooks, and black will win in exchange. So white would need to take back with the pawn, but this would be just horrible to have the pawn structure in front of the king ruined like that, and black would have a very nice position here. So knight e6 was forced, and the point is that black can get out of the fork right here on queen and rook with tempo, playing queen d5, threatening checkmate. Now white obviously has to defend against the checkmate, and there are not much moves here. f3 has to be played and was played. And now black removes the rook from the attack, plays rook f8. And here Karjakin played rook e5, rightly so. If knight c7, that was also possible. Then this is a nice family fork, as they like to say, but black, well, can deal with it quite well. Goes queen d4 check, king h1. Now rook takes e1 check, queen takes e1. You see already 2 pieces have left the family fork, but here actually black doesn't move his rook, since white also has some threats coming in with the queen, but picks up the bishop. And now knight takes a8 and knight takes c2, plays a fork of his own. And here, after queen e8 check, king h7, well, knight b6, this is all just leads to a draw. You can kind of pick and choose here. For example, bishop takes f3, knight d7, bishop takes g2. Now white shouldn't take because of knight d3, and black wins actually. So king g1, black doesn't have a check, or a sensible check at least. Queen g3, and now white is the one giving a perpetual here with the knight. So it's just another variation, starting here with knight c7 that ultimately, with perfect play from both sides, leads to a draw. But Karjakin went rook e5, attacking the queen, queen d6, and now c3. And here actually white had an interesting alternative. After c3, there's not much play left in the position. So I would like to spend quite some time on this move here, rook e2. Moving back the rook, attacking the queen. And now black needs to go to d7, cannot go to d5 because with the rook on e2, the same variation we just saw with knight c7 now works very well for white, because in this line you can see that there is no fork on c2. With the queen on e1, black could take on c2 and fork queen and rook. Here he cannot, and it's just clearly worse. Bishop takes a8. Well, this bishop can just be picked up and white is up in exchange. So black needs to go queen d7. And now knight c7, rook takes e2, queen takes e2, rook c8. All these moves are forced from both sides really. Rook e1. Now black cannot take on c7. If he does, then bishop takes c7, queen takes c7, queen e8 check, king h7, rook e6, bringing the rook in and threatening quite deadly queen g6 followed by rook e8, and black really cannot stop this attack here. So black has to go in this position instead of rook takes c7, has to go queen d4 check, then queen e3, knight takes c2, queen takes d4, knight takes d4, and rook e7. And this position is also very close to equality, but here there's some more potential, and white can definitely try for a long time, and it's not a draw immediately. There are 2 moves here to be considered, g5 and knight c6. Other moves, well, black shouldn't take this pawn, for example. There's bishop e5, and this would be quite bad for black. And king f8, that would run into bishop d6, would be also no good. So here, if knight c6, there's one possibility. But then after rook d7, black should get rid of this active rook on the 7th rank. But white can play bishop d6, pick up this pawn, at least he's a pawn up. It's obstacle at bishops, and the white pawn structure is not that great, but still it's a pawn. White can definitely try something here, even though it should lead to a draw. And the other move is a move, you're not really comfortable playing unless you either have prepared this line or you're a computer, or well, you're just fearless. g5, opening up the king even more, but it works because of the bishop e5, which looks very scary, let's be honest. Black can go knight c6, rook g7, and go king h8 actually. and white cannot make use of the fact that he has a discovered check because the bishop on e5 is under attack. And if bishop f6, this bishop is just further harassed, and white doesn't have anything better than to repeat moves here, because if the bishop goes back to c3, he is further disturbed by b4. So that is one move after g5, bishop e5, which leads to equality, but a better try would be bishop d6, knight c6, and now rook e6, knight b4, and black has to find all these moves, and it could be quite well that Carlsen was prepared to play all this if it happened on the board. I don't know. But if you have to figure this out over a board, you can definitely make some mistakes, and there's some potential left, as I said. Here, once again, white can either go rook takes h6, which is interesting, or go bishop takes c5, and we would once again come to a position, knight d5. If rook takes c7, well, this is very pleasant for white, with the extra pawn here and having a strong bishop on this long diagonal. So black needs to go knight d5, and then rook e8 check, rook takes, knight takes, and yeah, we see this position again where white has an extra pawn and can certainly play for a little bit, even though, well, it should lead to a draw. I mean, looking at this, it will be probably quite difficult to break this blockade in the center. Alright, just a little excursus. Is that a word in English? Well, just a little bit of a sidetrack information here. Because in the game what happened was c3, and now we see these pieces come off and we come to this position. There's just not much play left, and we'll get through the last moves very quickly. So I want to spend some time on the most important alternative in the game, which was 22 rook e2. Alright, so rook c1, the rooks come off. We have opposite color bishops, just like in the last game, but in contrast to the last game, there's really not much any side can play for here. Queen e1, queen d7, targeting the d3 pawn. So if white takes on b4, black takes on d3. King h2, that was the last trap Karjakin set up here for Carlsen, but Carlsen just avoided so easily, played a5. Black should not take on d3 here. White doesn't take on b4 here, but just plays check and goes bishop e5, and that's really the main thing black has to watch out for, his weak king, because his pawn is already advanced to f5, and in opposite colored bishop positions it's quite easy for one side to initiate an attack. And here the threat of queen f7 is quite strong. Black has to find the only move f4, but then after queen f7, queen g6, queen takes f4, now white can, well, say that he has a little bit of an advantage, certainly, and he can try for a long time. So there was no need to do that, and Carlsen went a5, protecting a pawn on b4. Now queen e3, bishop d5, going after this pawn, and now queen b6 just leads to some exchanges, and here a draw was offered. We see a completely symmetrical position. The only difference is king safety. The black king is still a bit weaker, but it's just not that important here with such reduced material on the board, and that's why Karjakin accepted the draw. So after 3 exciting games, the last 3 games rather long and interesting, we had a game which was also interesting, but it fizzled out to a draw pretty quickly, and the reason why that was because Karjakin didn't choose rook e2, I would say. Instead of, he played c3, and he could have kept the game going for much longer with rook e2. But once again, we're seeing Carlsen's impressive opening preparation here. He was better prepared, and he achieved an effortless draw of the black pieces, neutralizing the first white game Karjakin had of the 2 he has in a row. So now we'll have a rest day, and then the next game will be on Sunday, once again with Karjakin with the white pieces. If you want to read further reports on the World Chess Championship, you can either go to Chess24 or the new blog I'm participating in. I'm one of the authors, beyondchess.com, and you'll find both these links in the description. Alright, I hope you guys have a good weekend and see you soon. Goodbye.